Awesome. Okay, welcome everybody. We're going to be talking about the midheaven today. The midheaven is the top point in your chart, and it tells you a lot about your purpose. It tells you a lot about what the world needs from you. It tells you a lot about your career and things like this. So if you're new to astrology, if you're old to astrology, whatever, I hope you get something new. I hope that it inspires you, and I'm always love learning from you guys too. So if you don't have your chart, you can get a free one at astro.com. And you just need your birthday, your birth time, and your birthplace. If you're new to me and my work, I'm Tiffany Harelik. I have a master's in health psychology. I'm a registered yoga teacher. I've got certificates in a bunch of the metaphysical arts, including the recent distinction of master teacher with Lisa Williams. Before I got into astrology, I did live music events. I still do live music events because I have fun with them. I worked for places like Google, and I was the director of marketing for Torchy's Tacos. And I just have a background in events and buzzing around, which took me into my next hobby, which was beekeeping. So I have a sister company called Spellbound. We publish metaphysical books. I have a beekeeping hobby out at our farm. And I have a Scorpio sun, a Scorpio moon, Sag rising, which means my midheaven is Virgo. So we're going to talk about that a little bit later. The workshop structure today, it's just basically we're going to be talking about the mission of your midheaven, 3 keys for studying your midheaven, and then we're going to walk through the zodiac. And so in addition, I have a slide for each sign and an example of some popular figure that we can study a little bit. So if you know your midheaven, great. If you need to look it up, it's really just at the top of your chart. It's where the 10th house starts. Depending on what system you're using, it could be, it could be on either side of the line. So you need to make sure that you're looking for the MC. Your midheaven is the MC. It's the highest point on the horizon that any planet can reach. So it's at the very, very top. It's at the 12 o'clock spot in your chart. It talks about your public persona, your professional path, and really it's the expression of how you give your gift to the world. It's the expression of it. It's not the actual thing. And it's the collective view of what they need from you, what the tribe of humanity needs from you. So you want the world to be a better place, and the 10th house shows us how we can uniquely and individually accomplish that. The social reality is we ask people what they do, right? What do you do for work? And I know a lot of people that don't do that, right? Like, how do you spend your time? What are some of your passions? But the social reality is we often, ask people what they do for a living. Awesome. But their life really shouldn't be defined by their career. So there's this whole intrinsic need to play a role, right? Like, I want to be a firefighter when I grow up. I want to be a pilot when I grow up. Things like this. There's this intrinsic need, and it's our social reality. But any change in status, so when you get married, when you change jobs, when you graduate, when you change status, there's usually some sort of astrological registration of that event that takes place in the midheaven at the top of the 10th house. So your 10th house is your mission from God. It's the area of your chart that's bigger than you. It's not about you. It's about what the world needs from you. And I like to think about it this way too. Your partner, your significant other, your children, your parents, the people that you love, ideally the people that you love the most, they have a mission, right? They have a 10th house, and you can learn to honor their work because other souls are counting on something from them too. So I think it's an important thing to think about as we're studying the midheaven. It's definitely a vehicle for your spiritual work, for, what did I say here? The conditions of other souls are more important. So this is kind of where you turn away from really what you want to do and how you can be of service. So that's easy for me to say because, again, Virgo midheaven loves to be of service, loves to be finding practical things for the community, right? Let's see. And so how we make our lives a gift to the community. This is something that we can really turn, every part of our lives into our yoga, where we're really looking about what's the bigger picture here. How can I take this and make it, something that is really of service to the other people in our community? there's 12 signs, there's 12 expressions of your purpose, but there's thousands and thousands and thousands of roles. So one of my favorite astrological teachers, right, Stephen Forrest, he talks about this. He's like, people try to give us a chart and they'll say, well, what do you think I do for a living? Well, if you think about the millions and gajillions of roles that you could have in society, it's not really the astrologer's role to play guessing games to look at it. But it is a unique way to look at your chart, because if you look at the signs and if you look at the different expressions of the signs, you can kind of see and feel, am I going to feel fulfilled by this purpose, by this mission? Am I going to feel fulfilled by the way that I behave out there in the way that the world needs me? So this is another Stephen Forrest thing. He says that the flower opens and the bees come and find it. I love that because I'm a beekeeper, but the midheaven tells you really what your cosmic job description is, and it tells you what part of yourself you have to develop to a radical degree, he says, for your cosmic job to come to find you. So basically, if we're going to develop yourself in a radical way, then the job comes and finds you. You don't have to know what your midheaven is, go do that job and feel successful. You have to develop yourself in a radical way. For me, it's through Virgo things, okay? So I'm developing myself in a radical way through all of the Virgo themes, and then the jobs come and find me. So I'm taking care of the details, I'm taking care of the bullet points, I'm taking care of practical ways to be of service to humanity. Virgo rules bees, Virgo rules Mercury, so teaching classes and things like this. And as I develop myself in a radical degree, right, I just got done with the Master Teacher Program. Now more people are inviting me to teach, to take care of bees, to do all of the things that are very Virgo, right? So it's kind of fun to see how it can play out. If you have a sun, like the planet, the sun in your 10th house, your job is to develop yourself to a radical degree. And we have a really good example of that in the slides a little bit later. So your midheaven mission starts where your personal relationships end and your connection with the tribe of humanity begins. And so this is how you connect with people that are kind of strangers, that don't really know you, that you don't have a personal intimate knowledge of. These are people that just need your help at a broad level, right? So here's kind of the medicine of this whole episode, of this whole workshop. There are 3 main keys for studying your midheaven. Guys, live, when I move the camera, the people around on the camera, can you see that? Is that annoying? You can't see that. Okay, thanks, Tracy. 3 keys for studying your midheaven. First, we're going to look at the sign on the midheaven. Duh, easy one. I've been talking about mine in Virgo. I know Nadine's, yours is in Pisces, you said. It looks like Shelly's is in Gemini, David's is in Capricorn, right on. Tracy's is in Gemini. And so we're going to look at that sign. We're also going to look at any planets that are in the midheaven. And then we're going to look at the ruler, the planetary ruler of the midheaven and their signs and houses. So 3 different things: the sign, any planets, and then the planetary ruler of the sign. And they're all equally weighted, according to Stephen Forrest, who is an evolutionary astrologer that I really follow and love and adore. So I feel like these are the essence points. It's not just the sign. It's not just the planet in the 10th house. And it's not just the planetary ruler. All 3 of them together give you this kind of beautiful cocktail of information as we are studying this part. So I guess that's it. So we're going to jump in. Any questions before we go through the zodiac here? Cool. Okay, I'm just going to keep talking until we have need. So Aries. So if you have Aries in the 10th house, if Aries is your midheaven, how you express your purpose. Some of you guys know my friend April Lehman. She's a very talented Akashic Records reader. She's expressed interest in coming back and doing some pop-up readings for us. But she has her Aries in her midheaven. And so she's a fire starter. She's here to start things. She's here to ignite things. She doesn't necessarily have to finish them. She's somebody I call when I'm running new ideas by her, because she's going to know what it needs, what it takes to get something started. Aries in the 10th house is fierce, it's fearless, it's somebody that needs to be in charge, somebody that's going places where they haven't, other people haven't gone before. And it's really somebody that has a huge desire to take action and to contribute. When you're looking at Aries in the 10th house, do you guys know why I'm saying to look for Mars placements? Yes. All of you astrologers know. Okay, good. Shelley knows, Nadine knows, and I know you know. So we've got this. So here, who did I pick? I picked Richard Branson. He has an Aries midheaven, and this is his actual chart. A quote I pulled for him is that business opportunities are like buses. There's always another one coming. That is symbolic, right, of an Aries midheaven. It's just always something coming, always something new, always the next thing. This is somebody who's incredibly entrepreneurial, who was able to start many different projects, and who enjoys starting a bunch of projects and constantly what's the right word? Re-identifying yourself, reinventing yourself, things like this. So I have his birth time up there. This is his actual chart. The fact that he is an Aries midheaven speaks to his entrepreneurship. Aries is ruled by Mars. His Mars is debilitated in Libra, right? Mars does not like to be in Libra, so that's a bit of a challenge. And he rose to the occasion of his life. He rose to the challenge here. Can you imagine a world, this is a rhetorical, or this isn't a question to answer, but can you imagine a world without all of the things that Richard Branson started, right? He started, not everything was successful, but he rose to this challenge of this Mars debilitation in Libra, and it's in his third house. So here's his little Mars in Libra in his third house. It's very close to his Neptune. I personally have Mars and Neptune conjunct in my first house. You'll see this in presidential figures. You'll see this with people that have spiritual vision, that are here to lead a spiritual community. And you can see that in his work. So it's not just that we're looking at Mars, we're also looking at what might affect Mars, and Neptune speaks to that spiritual side on the healthy side. And in the third house, right, this is the house of communications, the house of information exchange, the house of ideas going back and forth. And you can see that he's somebody who has had a lot of joint ventures, right? And some of them, like I said, went well, and some of them did not. In his 10th house, he has no planets. So I saw in the comments that somebody has no planets. That's no problem. It's just less to discuss and orient with. Okay. So who else has an Aries midheaven? These are people like Stephen King, George W., Elon, Angelina, and Sting. I thought that was interesting when I was doing this little research project. So I'm going to check my chat before we go into Taurus. Okay, cool. So Taurus, if you've got a Taurus midheaven, you are here to ground the people in your life, right? You are here, the opposite of the Aries, right? Like you're here to ground the people. Now there's different expressions, right? A Taurus midheaven, this could be somebody who's into the aesthetics of life, that is into the finer things of life, that appreciates the materialistic and physical side of life. Nothing wrong with that, right? This is a very sensual sign. They thrive with admiration. So they need to be somewhere where there is some kind of recognition. They're diligent, they are hardworking, you can trust them, you can count on them. If you're hiring them in your line of work, this is a nice placement to have because you can count on them. Now, if you're looking at a Taurus midheaven, you're going to look for the planet that rules Taurus, which is Venus. So we're going to look for Venus placements here. Makes sense? I'm talking at kind of an intermediate level because I feel like I know and love my audience that's here today, and I don't want to dumb anything down, but I also don't want to over talk. If anybody has questions, just let me know where you are. So a good Taurus midheaven example is Marilyn Monroe. Also John Wayne, also Hulk Hogan. I had a huge Hulk Hogan crush when I was little. Oh my gosh. So Marilyn says, give a girl the right shoes and she can conquer the world. You can just hear, right? You can just hear the Taurus midheaven in that statement. Okay. And so she was born in LA. I didn't know that. The Taurus midheaven, she's a beauty icon, some would say, perhaps. And so you can see that beauty element, that sensual element, that desire and interest to be part of the beauty in the physical world. Taurus is ruled by Venus. And so her Venus happens to be in the 9th house, right here, right? Venus in Aries. And this makes her a bit of a romantic. So if you look through all the Marilyn Monroe quotes, there's tons that are romantic related. I think there's one like, I don't mind living in a man's world as long as I get to be a woman in it, right? There's these very romantic, like juicy quotes by her. So you can see that in her, expressed in her life. You can also see that her 10th house clues, she has Mercury in Gemini. So her 10th house, not only is her midheaven in Taurus, but over here off to the side, her Mercury that rules communications, talking, learning lines, the messengers of the gods, conveying things to the public, right? That makes a lot of sense for somebody that's in the limelight, to have this very vocal and strong presence out there. So Mercury and Gemini for her is her 10th house. There's dualities in her life. And she's using her voice in a beautiful, Taurian, sensual, interesting, grounded way. Kind of interesting, right? Kind of fun to look at it. So if we go on to Gemini in the 10th house, Gemini in the midheaven, how these Gemini midheaven people express themselves, they are the wordsmiths. They are the teachers. They are the public influencers. These people are intelligent, really smart. They know how to use words and craft words in a way that the public, the world can understand. The collective needs them to come up with the words that are understandable in mass. They are the messengers. And so with a Gemini midheaven, you're going to be also looking for a Mercury placement. I picked Kevin Costner. There were lots to pick from with it. You know what? And I want to acknowledge, I was looking at celebrities for this piece just because we can all mostly know who we're talking about. If I had to do it again, or if I had another couple hours, I would go back and put in some non-celebrity types, right? Just some more, I don't know, philanthropic type people. Not that these people aren't philanthropic, but this was just an easy way to convey what I'm trying to teach today. So lots of actors, lots of producers, lots of people in cinema and film and the celebrity world are going to have this Gemini midheaven placement because, again, they are the messengers. His quote, what did I say? I work for the public, right? Gemini in the midheaven. Yeah, you do, buddy. I work for the public, for the people who are paying to go to the cinema rather than for the critics. So I don't know, I don't think Kevin Costner knows his astrology. If you guys have an in, I would love to read for him, okay? Get me on the set of Yellowstone, let's go, and I'd love to read for him. But, he had Field of Dreams, which some would say is It's a Wonderful Life of that era, right? He spoke to people in a way that provided hope. And this is what was needed. Now, he didn't go out and say, I'm here to provide hope through words and actions and talk through things. He just lived his life and the work found him. Okay. So I get full body chills with that. So I think it's just a really important point to reiterate over and over for myself and for all of us watching. So Tracy's got Mercury in Gemini conjunct the South Node, which is 5 degrees away from the midheaven. Interesting. Okay. I love the Gemini North Node people. For Kevin here, so we know that Gemini is ruled by Mercury. So we go on a mystery treasure hunt and we go find his Mercury. I identified it earlier for us. So Mercury is over here in Aquarius in his 5th house. The 5th house is creativity and play and the arts. It very much has to do with the actor and being in the film industry. Makes a lot of sense. It's the house of children and love given, and Aquarius is the network. Aquarius is who you know. And so it makes a lot of sense that he would have a role to play in the universe that requires him being very well networked in the arts. And in his 10th house, he does have some planets. So over here, he's got both Jupiter and Uranus conjunct. They're right here. And so in his 10th house, right? So if you look at 10th house planets, he's got a career that's going to expand. He probably has something that goes viral, that whole Uranus Jupiter expansion, explosion type energy. And he had several things that went viral, right? Pretty much everything he's done has been very, very popular, very well liked, very much watched, very much in the rankings of, what's the right word? He got a lot of views, right? He got a lot of views on his stuff. So he does have a big, wild career. Uranus is always kind of taking you on a path that is unexpected, right? With sudden changes. And so you can see where he's in baseball or where he's in the Yellowstone set. You can see him taking these big, huge, wild expanses. Okay. And so it's interesting to see that play out in his career. So with Gemini midheaven, you can also see Keanu, you can see Sissy Spacek, you can see Tom Hanks, and Madonna. So I had to pick between Madonna and Kevin won today. Madonna got on the last slide, so you guys have already studied Madonna. So Cancer, so if we go into Cancer, and Sarah says she's Gemini midheaven with no planets. Nice. Okay. Gemini. So we got a lot of Gemini midheaven people. This is so cool. I love you guys. You are definitely here to write, convey, teach, say something, speak, produce. You're here you have the right words that the public needs. So don't be shy in conveying something, coming up with textbooks, coming up with written notes, coming up with plays and dramas and ways to convey messages to the masses, to the people. They need your words. So Cancer, the Cancer midheaven, how you express your purpose is really, I really see you as the protector role, as the caregiver, the one with a large amount of emotional intelligence. You're going to naturally, radically develop these qualities in yourself. And as you develop all of your Cancer qualities, right, the work will come to you. The purpose, the mission will come to you. You understand the needs of society. And with Cancer in the midheaven, we want to look for moon placement. Am I going too fast? You guys keeping up with me? Okay, good. I'm a bullet pointy person. So again, coming up with a mix of identities to look at. JFK, one of his big quotes, ask not what you can do, not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. That's the Cancer midheaven, isn't it, guys? Right? Like that's it. That's the Cancer midheaven. So Kennedy was born in Massachusetts, and he has this protector of the country. That's the Cancer midheaven. Especially, the United States where I practice is a Cancer, right? And so his midheaven, his whole purpose is part of protecting this whole country. Makes a lot of sense when you overlay the charts together. Cancer is ruled by the moon. And so we want to go on our little treasure hunt and find the moon in his chart, which is over here in the 11th house. And what we know about the 11th house, right, is that it represents our networks, our friends, large groups of people, the collective consciousness. And so you can see that he's really in tune with the needs of the people. And then in his 10th house, if you look at his 10th house right here, we've got Saturn in Cancer and Neptune in Leo. All right. So a lot of his quotes and a lot of his vibe was very idealistic, very heart-centered, and very strategic. If you go study JFK, you can find plans like his speeches around idealism, his strategic plans for peace. You can see Neptune conjunct or very close to Saturn here in the 10th house, part of his purpose, part of what we need him to do. So we need him to be the best Cancer qualities he can be in order to serve in mass. Bob Hope, I thought was interesting, right? Bob Hope was a Cancer midheaven. Sally Field, Bing Crosby, and Britney Spears. Interesting. You just like people better when you know their astrology. All right. So you have more compassion, I'll say. You have more compassion, and you just know somebody's soul, and you can see what they're here to do and what they're about. So Leo in the 10th house, Leo in the midheaven, these people are going to express their purpose. They are star power. They are stardust. They are the celebrity. They are the artist. They need to be in the public eye. They need to have their own self-expression that is super creative, super heartfelt, and super playful, oftentimes very youthful. You're not going to find like the military type leaders. You're not going to find the generals and the CEOs and the sergeants. These are not the Leo and 10th house people. They will feel squashed by the rules of life, right? With Leo in the 10th house, you're also going to find a sun placement because the sun is the planet that rules Leo. Who did I pick? Oh, Neil Young. I want to live. I want to give. I've been a miner for a heart of gold. That is a Leo midheaven lyric, right? Leo rules the heart space, the heart center, the love. You can also see Pluto in his 10th house. Pluto rules the underground, digging underneath the surface, so that he's talking about being a miner for a heart of gold. Pluto rules gold too. Kind of interesting how it all works together. So Neil Young, born in Toronto, born in Ontario. He's got this entertainer career. His Leo midheaven is ruled by the sun, which happens to be in Scorpio in his chart over here in the 1st house. So he's here to deeply know himself, to deeply change himself, to change his views, to change his the way that he thinks about things. This is somebody who, again, very controversial in some circles. My limited view of him is somebody who came up with a lot of interesting songs that I personally like, and somebody who's big into Farm Aid, which is cool and radical. That is part of the transformation that he's gone through, like him, good, bad, or otherwise. That's the sun in Scorpio in him. That is part of his own mutation that he needs to do so that he can have the treasure that we're all seeking in this particular soul. So he also has Mars and Pluto so both of the rulers here, right, of Scorpio, of his sun, are in the 10th house. So his 1st and 10th house are intricately connected. You can see some of his songs, when he's talking about war, when he kind of gets in the wrong side of Leonard Skinner and they're talking about war and hating him. There's all these war themes that you can pick up on. That's Mars and Pluto. Right? And his stance is that Leo side. So you can also see a Leo midheaven with Sigmund Freud. I was like, I need to look at that chart again. Clint Eastwood, right? You can see that. You can see that really interesting entertainment vibe coming out of Clint Eastwood. Prince has a Leo midheaven. Nicole Kidman and Tom Cruise. No wonder that's a steamy thing to watch. And Robin Williams, I thought was really sweet, a really sweet addition to having a Leo midheaven. So let me check the chat. Good. Okay, you guys are just putting in your placements. Perfect. So we've got Virgo. Virgo in the 10th house, Virgo in the midheaven. These are the healers. These are the people that work with earth magic. These are the people that are practical and organized and talk in bullet points and are efficient. Virgo rules bees, Virgo rules the community messengers. And so we also want to look for Mercury placements when we're talking about Virgo midheaven people. I keep wanting to say North Node. So that's why I'm like slow over my words. We're talking about midheaven. So Bob Marley, he said, emancipate yourselves from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds. To me, this is a line that speaks to his Virgo midheaven. He had pitch, he had rhythm, he worked with herbs, if you will. These are all Virgo themes, right? And he's saying, you've got to take care of yourself. You're the only one that can free your mind. That's very much a Virgo midheaven thing, right? You guys that take my classes, if you've heard me say it once, you've heard me say it 1,000 times. You were born wise. You were born psychic. You don't have to prove anything to me. It's part of who you are. Just as you live and breathe, your senses extend into the, ethereal spiritual realm. And this is overcoming the mind. This is your own self-healing. So the more I Virgo myself into my right way of thinking, the better of service, the more interesting I'm going to be to you guys, right? So Virgo in Bob Marley's chart, we've got to look for Mercury. His Mercury is, of course, in Aquarius in the 2nd house. And what do we know about second house is that it's a moneymaker. It's how he makes his money, by talking to the masses, by sharing what he thinks with what he says, Mercury, into Aquarius, the networks, the masses, the groups of people, the collective consciousness. We also see in his 10th house, let me go over here, we see Jupiter right here, Neptune, and Chiron. So this is hard to see, but the line that delineates his 10th house is actually right here. So these three planets, Jupiter, Neptune, and Chiron. Now, you can hear like his songs, for example, Buffalo Soldier. You can hear in his songs these wounds that really transformed a people, that transformed a nation, that transformed not only his nation, but many nations. So on a global scale, Jupiter expands. It's the cosmic magnifying glass. Neptune spiritualizes. And then Chiron speaks to the medicine bag that we all carry inside of ourselves. And so he used those wounds of a people, and he talked about them and turned them into his medicine bag, and then shared them out with the world. So Elvis also has a Virgo midheaven. I thought that was interesting because people that talk about or study Elvis know how perfect his music is. So maybe I should be a musician next, right? But the idea here is that he's very specific. Virgo, it's got to be perfect, right? I'm a good example of Virgo midheaven in my own little way. We've got Brad Pitt, and I thought Tom Arnold was an interesting one. The reason I thought Tom Arnold was interesting is because I saw him on an episode of Tyler Henry. Did you guys see that episode? Well, I was so impressed with him. Like, he really just embraced having this young medium over at his house and learning about the afterlife. And I just thought, well, that's an interesting thing to look at, the healing side of the Virgo midheaven coming out there for Tom. Okay, we go into Libra. So Libra, how the Libra midheaven expresses their purpose. You'll see people that are really good at aesthetics, that are really interested in the beautiful side of life. They often have artistic symbols around their house or throughout their career. They're involved in the fine arts. They could also be involved in international negotiations. So how you go from somebody who could be at cosmetology school to somebody who's doing international negotiations, that is what we were talking about at the beginning when we're saying there's 12 signs, yet a gajillion million ways for that to express. And so, this idea is that as long as you work on your Libra stuff and you're coming into inner harmony, inner peace, inner beauty, all of those things, the work and the world and everything that the world needs of you will find you. You don't have to go find it. You just have to work on your Libra stuff. And so with Libra in the 10th house, we look for Venus placements. I love Goldie Hawn. I just love her. And so, sorry. She says, I'm not afraid of my femininity and I'm not afraid of my sexuality. So I chose this because she's got this Libra midheaven. She is a beauty icon. Libra has Venus is the planetary ruler, and it's in Scorpio, which is that very sexy, sensual, mysterious sign. And it's in her 10th house of career, right? And so she is a sex symbol in many ways. I mean that politely, and I mean that as a compliment. Hopefully Goldie hears this someday. So if you know Goldie, let me know. I'd love to read for her. But here again, in her 10th house, she's got Venus, which represents love and luxury and peace. She self-identifies as a Jew. She grew up Jewish and then embraced a Buddhist philosophy. And so you can see that Buddhist mentality is very evident, that peace and balance and harmony. So the more she found that within herself and took her culture and her belief system into the world, this is what really ignites her midheaven and helps her be seen, admired, and loved. So it wasn't just overboard. That's not the only reason that we love Goldie, right? We love her for other reasons. Other people with the Libra midheaven are Bob Dylan, which I thought was cool. Ronald Reagan, which is well read by many astrologers. Tom Waits, and Pink, the music artist Pink. Okay, So Scorpio midheaven, the Scorpio midheaven, these are people that are the alchemists. They are the great transformers. They're here to really change things. They're here to mutate and transform, and they're here to learn the right use of personal power, the right use of their own personal power. If they have created jealousy or resentment or bitterness in other people, they're here to learn that and how to wield that differently so that they're not out there misusing their own power. So Scorpio is co-ruled by both Mars and Pluto. So of course, we're going to look for those type of placements, those planets in these charts. I went with Sean Connery for this one. So he says there's nothing like a challenge to bring out the best in a man. So Sean Connery, Scottish, right? Known for his roles in the spy world with mystery and intrigue. So that's very Scorpio, international mystery type things. That's a very Scorpio thing to talk about. So he's got, I mentioned Mars and Pluto co-rule Scorpio. So let's look. Mars is in Gemini in the 6th house. And so, if you look up his quotes, he has a lot of quotes that are very much geared towards the masculine. And the masculine needs a spokesperson, not a smokesperson, but a spokesperson, just like the feminine does, right? Just like every walk of life does. So in his chart, one of the things that he was here to do was to bring that sensual, intrigue, mysterious, most interesting man in the world vibe out into the public. That's what some members of society needed from him, right? And so we see that with Mars and Gemini in the 6th house. Right? We see that with Pluto and Cancer in the 7th house. We see that he's a powerful protector there with his gun, with his ladies, right? With all of his flaws and all of his benefits. He's a character that the world needed, that our collective subconscious needed to play with. So he's got no planets in the 10th house, but you can see we don't even need any planets in the 10th house to still see how his midheaven shines, right? And that's the importance of those three, that little recipe that we're working with today. So also with Scorpio midheavens are Meg Ryan, Val Kilmer, and Alicia Silverstone. There were many. Sagittarius in the 10th house, right? Sagittarius, this is the person who's on the great adventure of life, the seeker, the quest for truth. Sagittarius, it's funny because we always have this tagline that, they like to travel. That's not really it. The Sagittarius folks I have in my life, they're not travel adverse, but they're not like out there looking for the next adventure, trying to live on the road all the time, right? I have Sag rising, but you could look at this element of travel in many ways. It could be astral travel. It could be that they learn a foreign language. It could be that they're commuting. So I don't want to throw out the word travel and then pigeonhole it like the way that mainstream astrology does. Goldie laughing. Okay, yeah, Nadine is remembering Goldie from laughing. Perfect. Okay, so Sagittarius, you're going to look for the Jupiter placement. So one of my all-time favorites, Wayne Dyer, one of my favorite quotes, if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. It's so true. So true. And if you need strategies for that, your Virgo midheaven has broken it down into bullet points, right? So Wayne Dyer, born in Detroit, Michigan. I believe him to be known as a spiritual warrior. Now, what's really interesting about this chart, I wanted to point out that you can see this Sagittarius midheaven right here activates a grand cross. First of all, this chart doesn't show you, but it's in the exact, of course, degree here as his Pisces ascendant, his Neptune in Virgo over here, and his Mars and Moon in Gemini. So this activates a grand cross. A grand cross suggests that this is going to be somebody who has a certain amount of struggle, a certain amount of inner conflict. This is very 5 of Wands cards for my tarot friends. This is something that he has to go through himself in order to overcome, and then the world will find him. So had he not gone on a personal journey to overcome his personal challenges, we wouldn't have the Wayne Dyer content that we have. Wayne Dyer is a sober person, or was a sober person. He's a Bikram yogi. He does a lot of the things that we all love to do here that help free the mind, basically. And so you can also see the Sagittarius side where he did travel to a lot of different places. So Sag is ruled by Jupiter. His Jupiter happens to be in Aries over here. And it's in his second house. It's hard to see in this chart. And you can see that he was a Hay House author. It went very far and wide. His words were published. Jupiter rules publishing, and it rules expansion. So what he had to say, he was intended to overcome his personal challenges, to say something that the masses would carry on for years and years and years past his life. Again, this is somebody with no planets in the 10th house that has a very, very powerful and important midheaven as a spiritual warrior. You could also see George Clooney, Whoopi Goldberg, Antonio Banderas, Ringo Starr. Ringo has a Sagittarius midheaven, right? David Bowie, I love that. Like, I love that kind of spacey theme of Sagittarius, that travel theme, astral travel. And then Whitney Houston. Whitney Houston had a Sag midheaven. I have a hilarious dream a couple months ago about Whitney Houston knocking on our door. Have I told you guys this? Oh my God. Okay, so short segue is that she was knocking on our door. Do you remember Publishers Clearinghouse, those old commercials? Well, she was that. She was like ready to present this check to myself and my best friend. And my best friend was in the garden in my dream. And she goes, "Is that Whitney Houston?" And Whitney turns around and goes, "Yeah, girl." Like, that was my dream. I don't even have a Whitney Houston thing, but I thought it was funny that she came up in my research today. And so she also has a Sag midheaven. Capricorn in the 10th house, Capricorn midheaven. These are the leaders, the CEOs. They're rising to the top. They need to be in charge. If you have a kid that has a Capricorn midheaven, they want to be the boss of you. They don't understand why you think you're in charge. If you have an employee, like somebody that's you're over that has a Capricorn midheaven, you need to give them tools and ask them the questions to help them rise above. They want to beat you at your game. And so you don't want to squash that. You want to give them a pathway either to beat you at your game so that you can rightfully retire, or to give them a pathway onto something that they can lead themselves. They don't want to be the manager of the small town store. They want to be the owner of the enterprise that has 5 different locations across the globe. They're the boss, they're the waymaker, and we want to empower these people. You want to find their Saturn placements. Okay, so I found George Lucas. So I'm not yet a Star Wars person. I have a personal goal to watch them in order. Why? Because I'm quad left and I have Virgo midheaven. I need to do things in order. So I haven't watched them yet. It's a personal goal. And I'm going to make like Star Trek or Star Wars themed snacks. I'm going to make a whole thing of it and make it really fun. But when I pulled up George Lucas, I wasn't thinking about Star Wars. I was thinking about Lucasfilm. And the quote I pulled up for him says, "You simply have to put one foot in front of the other and keep going. You got to put blinders on and plow right ahead." He would not have had the empire that he created without that mentality. And you can see he's got a Capricorn midheaven. He was not going to be a small town actor. He was not going to be the guy in the gas station, serving at the pump. He was going to rise to the top of whatever he did. So we see that with his Star Wars empire. Capricorn is ruled by Saturn. In his chart, Saturn is in Gemini, right? Words, the wordsmith, talking about ideas, communicating stories. In the second house, which is money, the profit, right? I mean, like the money profit, a financial gain. He had a lot of that, but it required Saturn things. It required him to be strict, to be disciplined, to put the blinders on, to put one foot in front of the other. So he mastered his Capricorn needs and it benefited the whole world, right? I think. I haven't seen it yet. I'll let you guys know what I think. But it did benefit en masse, the whole world, right? His 10th house, the planets that he's got there are the moon, of course, in Capricorn. Now, the moon in Capricorn is a tricky one. There can be this huge sense of judgment in themselves, right? And it comes out as judgment in others. And in one way, it can be a very critical eye. It can be very helpful. It can be very discerning. It can say, that gray has green in it, and I want you to have a gray that has lavender in it. It can be very nitpicky, and it can come across as crazy, right? Like, gray's gray, right? But it's not, and they can see it. And so this can be used to advantage, and it can be used to detriment. And so I love a moon in Capricorn. I date a man that has moon in Capricorn. It can absolutely be beneficial. Shelly has a moon in Capricorn. And it's one of those that I really wanted to point out, because his ability to be discriminatory, right, with what he feels is really what helped him connect to the ambitions of many people, right, at a solar and a cellular level. He was born in Modesto. Interesting. So we're doing good. Okay, so Aquarius midheaven, how you express your purpose. You've got to do something unique and be rebellious. You cannot do it. You cannot conform in any way, shape, or form. You cannot do what society tells you. It's possible that you're good with tech. My Aquarius midheaven people tend to be in some sort of techie thing. Like they have the latest phone, they have the latest camera, they have the latest, like they have all the stuff that I want to have, but I don't know how they all plug together. I'm calling my Aquarius midheaven people. They tend to be futuristic. They're able to think outside of the box, and they've got to be the rebel. They've got to be revolutionary. Since Saturn and Uranus rule Aquarius, that's where we're going to look for extra clues and pieces of information. So we are looking at Will Smith for this one. And he says, life is lived on the edge, right? That's a great Aquarian midheaven quote. He had to be himself. He had to be his unique self. And guys, you have to just forgive me because I don't keep up with Hollywood. Is he the one that did the slapping? He was the slapper, right? Yeah, okay. I couldn't remember which way it was, and I didn't have time to look it up. But he's born in Philly, and he did this big, huge public slapping event. That's the Aquarius midheaven, right? That's the rebel. I don't care what stage you're on. You're going to get up, whether it was programmed or planned or not. He played the part of the rebel, right? In that moment. He also played the part of like Men in Black. He's been a rapper. You've seen him do many different things. He's had many different evolutions and revolutions of himself. So yeah, Shelly says that Todd was an Aquarius midheaven, a rebel. He loves tech stuff, and that you always got his old phone when he got a new one. Yeah, that's a perfect example of that, right? So Will Smith, if you look at any Aquarius midheaven, it's co-ruled by Saturn and Uranus. His Saturn is in Aries, right? That pioneer, that need to be first, that need to that blow off some hot-headed steam, and it's in the 11th house of networks, friends, groups. He was definitely had his place as a star in TV, film, and music. If you look at his Uranus in Virgo in the fifth house, we see a lot of creative types that have people that are in the entertainment industry have a lot of fifth house action. And that's true for Will as well. So here's his fifth house. He needed to have his unique expression no matter what. Uranus in Virgo is a tricky one, right? Because Virgo wants things a certain way and Uranus doesn't. And so there can be some of that perfectionist tendencies that could slow him down. I don't think they did, but you can look at his physique. You can look at him as a well-sculpted person. You can look at him as somebody who lets his light shine in his own unique way and isn't afraid to change it, isn't afraid to play this role or that role or do it differently. He just has to be himself. Aquarius is that inventive, so reinventing yourself. So Drew Barrymore has Aquarius midheaven. I kind of like this because if you've looked at her material lately, she's just really raw and honest in her Instagram stuff and in her, it's just kind of a different, it's not like the put together perfect little Hollywood box. She's just kind of messy. And we all secretly have big, messy, beautiful lives. We don't let it all hang out all the time, but she is right now or has been, and that might change. But the idea here, and there's no news, I don't know something secret. I'm not referring to a specific video or anything. I'm just saying she's free to be herself. That's Aquarius. I'm just free to be me. And I'm so free that I don't care what you think even. You know what I mean? That's the Aquarius midheaven. What you think does not stop me from shining and living, right? So she has no planets in her 10th house. Will has no planets in his 10th house. And so that just is another example that you don't need planets there to still paint a beautiful, ripe picture of your purpose and what the tribe needs from you. Pisces. So Pisces in the 10th house, the midheaven here. So how you express your purpose. This is somebody that needs to rely on their intuition. This is somebody that needs to rely on their compassion, that are empathic, that needs to understand their empathy so well. That is your mastery course, that you have to be a master at your own empathy, how you're feeling versus feeling the weight of the world. You're mastering your psychic skills. You're mastering your ability to dream things into existence. You're mastering the poetic and beautiful and artistic side of yourself. You're the muse for the world. So if you're not doing that for yourself, we're not going to get to do it. You know that song, I'm Every Woman? It's kind of like that, right? It's like, the more that I'm doing the best me I can be, the better it is for everyone. Now, we know that at a broad level, and our astrology secret is that we can kind of fine tune it a little and play with these little things. So with Pisces, we're going to look for Jupiter and Neptune placements. I love Ram Dass. I absolutely love all of his work. He's continues to serve from the afterlife through things like his Hanuman project that he set up. There are other projects that he set up. The Seva, what is it? Lives, I can't think of it. His Seva Foundation. He was born in Boston, and one of my favorites. We're all just walking each other home. Another one of my favorites. Treat everyone you meet like they're God in drag. You can't go wrong with that. It's like best day ever. I can't wait to see like whoever that is. Like, wow, it just creates this huge curiosity, this huge love, this huge interest and intrigue. That's Ram Dass, right? He was born Richard Alpert, and he changed his name, right? Went through his spiritual development, spent some time with Timothy Leary, experimented with the psychedelics, right? And you can see all this right here in this chart. So he has a Pisces midheaven. He traveled to India. He spent time with his guru, Neem Karoli Baba. This is very Piscean, right? To go on an overseas journey, whatever overseas means to you, and spend time with a guru and immersing yourself in the practices, the chanting, the ocean of love, right? All of these things are very Piscean midheaven. So Pisces is co-ruled one by Neptune. His Neptune is in Virgo in the third. I thought of his book, Be Here Now. You know, I bought that book when I was, 20-ish in college. And I looked through it and I'm like, this isn't a book. There's no bullet points. There's no action plan. What is this? You know what I mean? And so, okay, Be Here Now, got it. And I gave it away. And I wished I had kept it, right? I wished I had kept it. Of course, I can get another copy, but the idea here is you can see my little midheaven Virgo was having none of this artistic writing in circles things, it didn't make any sense to me at the time. But it is very much Neptune and Virgo in the third. The way that it's artistically done, it's not just a normal book, right? Like it's very poetic, it's very artistic, like all of these things are represented by here, Neptune and Virgo. So Pisces is also co-ruled by Jupiter. His Jupiter happens to be in Cancer over here in the 12th house. And I really think of his psychedelic exploration and experimentation when I think about 12th house and going beyond Jupiter, that expansion into this other world, and that Cancer side of him too, where he was taking care of people and wanting to really provide for people's spiritual well-being, and how his view on that really just blew up. What Ram Dass, and his dying days was surrounded by loved ones, and he was able to die in the light. He did not die in a beautiful way, but he was able to pass through into the light, right? With this sense of love, with this very Piscean, he gave people the opportunity to connect with him at that level. And that's just unusual. I have full body chills. So that's just unusual. A lot of us want to die in our privacy and with our dignity and all of these things. And he just said, it's all right, right? It's going to be all right. So in his 10th house, the last little piece in our recipe that we can look up, he's got Sun, Uranus, and his North Node. Okay, so his Sun in the 10th house, that is very interesting. His Sun, he absolutely had to be his unique self, develop himself. Uranus, it had to be weird, it had to be wild, it had to be different, it had to be eclectic, it had to be revolutionary, it had to break the mold. And his North Node, part of his destiny, right? During his lifetime, right? He's born in 1931. During his lifetime, that was not in some ways, it was not an easy stance to take. to just be wild and weird and yourself and go to India and do all this other stuff. In some ways, it was kind of in vogue, but in other ways, it was difficult. And so he rose to the occasion of his life. And I think he's a great example of that. David's got to go, no problem. Okay, now, that's it. So I'm going to stop my share. I'm going to come back. I am going to stop the recording at this moment and we'll stay on for some questions. So thanks guys for being here. Hope you learned something about the midheaven today that you didn't know before, that's juicy, that you can take forward with you.